the fire service. But I'm in Northern California and you're in Southern California, so our paths never crossed, but it sounds like we had, a little bit similar of a career. I was never on the operations side. I was always on the prevention side as a fire marshal. So I know what you endured. So what I know about you from Vincent is that you are a 36-year career fire service individual. It seems like you've done a little bit of everything, includes of an expansive fire prevention career and also an expansive fire ops career as a captain and an engine boss. You've been on multiple wildland fires throughout the state of California. So I think that gives you a really unique perspective. You can put together the fire prevention side with the ops side and actually mesh the two together to better help people understand what the issue is, how they can help prevent these devastating losses to their property. You've now connected with Allied Disaster Defense, and we also have your cohorts here, Vincent Liu and Mike Thayer that are also on the call.
And April Schwartz.
Yeah.
April's also with
us.
And
okay, great. Well, welcome, Allied Disaster Defense. I also don't know that much about Allied Disaster Defense. I know you've recently connected with Santa Clara Fire Safe Council, and Zeth is our friend, and we love talking to Zeth, and he's usually on the call. Oh, he is on the call today.
There he is.
It's great to have you in our Northern California neighborhood. And I think with that, Casey, it looks like we have a lot of people logged on. Maybe we should just start the meeting? Start the presentation if you're ready, Rich?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Well, welcome. You have
good.
the floor.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having us this morning. Yeah, my career was fire prevention and fire suppression at the same time, which is a rarity. I mean, I was the fire marshal. I served on code committees in the state. I did trainings at the CFPI. I think, Denise, you're familiar with CFPI. I did fire trainings there. I was also a station captain doing 24 to 72-hour shifts at the fire station. And somehow I got married and had a family in there. So yeah, it was busy. And so now I'm working with Allied, and we're trying to solve this wildfire problem, this insurance problem, all of that. So today I'm going to share my screen here. Today you get to see the first presentation. This is going to be the first time presenting this. We're working closely with farmers lately because they have now are requiring that anybody renewing in the WUI be a wildfire prepared home through IBHS. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And we've got farmers agents and residents that are calling us just and kind of in a panic going, what is this? And so we've taken on training and educating and helping people through this process. We're a partner with IBHS as far as doing their inspections for them. So we developed this training program for farmers agents and their clients. There's a lot of great information in here. I know I'm speaking to the people that come to church all the time. You know, the Fire Safe Council is always the same people. And I know we kind of say the same message over and over again. But hopefully you'll learn a little bit out of this one and maybe a different way of presenting it. So let's get started. If I can get this working here. Let's see here. There we go. Let me move some stuff so I can see my screen. There we go. So California's insurance market is at a tipping point. AIG, as we know, exited California. State Farm, Allstate are not renewing. They're not bringing in, or they're not bringing in new clients. And Farmers is renewing only with the wildfire prepared home designation. And we'll talk about that today. So how did we get here? Well, first, we all know, seeing that what happened in Paradise and all over over California, even Maui, all the devastating wildfires. Insurance companies are having to pick up the bill on a lot of devastation. We think of it as wildfire. It's actually a bigger problem than that, with hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods affecting the insurance industry. So they're really having a hard time. But we're going to focus on wildfires here in California. The California Department of Insurance, with Prop 103, puts a limit on insurance rates They can only raise them a certain amount, and to do that, they have to go through a lengthy process. So while the cost of insuring has gone up, especially with the reinsured, the cost of doing business as an insurance company has gotten way more expensive. And because of California's Department of Insurance, there's a limit to how much they can raise. So that balance is hard to manage. And that's why we're seeing rates that are going up and people that are losing their coverage. And of course, the cost of reinsurance that we just talked about is going beyond what insurance companies can handle. And those reinsurance costs cannot be passed through to the consumer. So it's a tough time for the insurance companies. So what's left? Well, you've got non-admitted policies, which are not covered and regulated by the Department of Insurance. Those tend to be, it's the wild, wild west. They can charge what they want and cover how they want, but you can still get insurance, but it's expensive. And as we were just talking, the California Fair Plan, I think we're all familiar with that. Denise and I were just talking about a lot of people having to go into that in Northern California. It's the insurance of last chance. Not a great insurance policy, but it is insurance. And then we're seeing insurance companies that are now looking at the IBHS, particularly farmers, and are finally looking at the risk at the parcel level, not just as a general area. So yeah, if you can get your home, lower that risk, we'll consider insuring you. Here's some of the changes that we've seen. This is non-admitted carriers, or actually the top is the California Fair Plan. This is the increase of people that have gone into the Fair Plan since 2018. It's pretty dramatic. And below you see the non-admitted written policies that are increasing. They're up to 12.5%. So we are seeing other options than your standard insurance. But again, the coverages tend to be more expensive and less coverage. These are the insurance rates that we saw in 2023, pretty significant. I think all of us have either seen that or know someone that's dealing with that. And this is where we're moving, or we should be moving. We've got a protectable interest. You got your home. We've got the insurance company, and we're looking to mitigate that risk in order to get coverage. And this is where we're moving towards, and it makes sense. So let's talk about wildfire. So this picture was actually taken at, I think it was probably 8 or 10 o'clock in the morning. We've seen the videos. If anyone's ever been through a wildfire, this is the reality. It's not as simple as knowing knowing your neighborhood and thinking you're just going to drive out on a clear day. It may seem like it's 1 o'clock in the morning. This is what we think of when we think of wildfire. We think of a home nestled into the wildland and this tsunami wave of flames that are going to take out this house. Now, this does happen, obviously. And yes, this house is not going to survive the onslaught of this wave of fire. But in reality, the majority of what we're seeing is this. Now, this is Coffee Park, which wasn't even considered into the WUI, and yet they lost like 2,700 homes overnight. And you don't see that wildland tsunami wave of flames that took it out. NFPA 17, that's the National Fire Protection Association, they require a minimum of 15 people on a house fire. Now, I can tell you as a career firefighter, it's more like 25 to 30, but that's how many firefighters it takes to put out a house fire. Well, what do you do in this case? Where are the 150 to 200 firefighters to combat these 10 homes? They're just not practical. Where are you going to park the fire engines? And what do you do in this case? So there's not enough fire engines. There'll never be enough firefighters to attack and defend and extinguish these house fires. The answer to the problem is not more fire suppression. It's fire prevention. We are not going to stop these fires, but we can keep the fires from destroying the homes. There's no reason that after the wildfire burns through, your home is still standing. That's the goal. And we do that 2 ways. We need to reduce our exposure by removing fuels, reducing fuels, or even relocating the fuels. And then we need to harden the structure. And that's with fire-resistant design, and a community approach. We'll talk a little bit about that. And just things to prevent the spread of fire within the home itself. And then there's active systems we'll talk about. So you got to understand what your enemy is. So in a wildfire, there's 3 ways that a home is going to get lost in a wildfire. First is direct flame contact. And that's where the fire goes from the vegetation right to your home and the flames attack your house. Next is embers. That's where the fire is burning away from your house, but those embers, and you'll see a video in a minute of what that looks like, set smaller fires next to your house. And the third is radiant heat. And that's vegetation that's away from your house. The radiant heat is so intense, it ignites your house. And we'll show you an example of that as well. This picture was taken at the Paradise Fire up in Paradise, California at the campfire. And this is all 3 impacts. There's your radiant heat from that fence attacking the side of the house. You've got the direct flame contact, and you've got the embers. Eliminating 2 of those 3 exposures is simple. You just do vegetation management. And we know this, right? We're residents of the state of California. Since 1965, we've been practicing vegetation management. Within that 30 feet, we reduce the amount of vegetation to bring the flames to the house. And with that 30 to 70, we're going to lower the amount of vegetation to stop that radiant heat. Again, we've been doing that since the mid 60s, and we all know about that 30 and 100-foot zone, zone 1 and zone 2, and we know it works. Here's an example of what that looks like. You've got your 30 feet here, and then you've got your next 70 feet in your native vegetation. Here's unmanaged vegetation. When it gets close to the house, we start separating the fuels and thinning them out. Here's an example of a residence that are code compliant. You've got managed very light vegetation here. You've got your clearance. They've got 40 feet of concrete here. So they're completely code compliant and passed inspection. Now I'm about to show you a video, and then this is in Santa Barbara. Excuse me. And in this video, you're going to see a fire burning in some really light, flashy fuels, really a manageable fire. And the firefighters are going to bring a fire line in here, a hose line in here, and attack this fire. But it's interesting. There's a juniper that's planted here. I want to show you what happens when a low intensity fire hits that juniper. Is the video playing, Mike?
There it goes.
I love technology. Let's try this again. You'll notice the fuels are not significant on that hillside. And here's that juniper we're talking about. This video is a great demonstration of how the radiant heat attacks structures. Now that was intense heat that lasts maybe 30 seconds. Juniper is very, very hot and very fast. But look at the siding on the house, the vinyl siding on this house. Now this plant is 40 feet away, which is 10 feet further than your 30 foot of clearance. And you can see that short, intense burst of radiant heat attack the vinyl siding on that structure. Now, thankfully, it was just one plant there. You can imagine if there was a line of those, or if they were much bigger, even if your home is code compliant, you're going to hit the onset of that radiant heat. So what's our answer? Well, this homeowner has made the extreme by removing all the vegetation on their property. Now, this is probably a result of the California Drought Buster program, which happened about 10 or 15 years ago, where everyone removed everything and replaced it with gravel. However, they removed the vegetation to prevent that radiant and direct flame contact. And they painted their house orange. A whole nother subject. We can go on that all day. But it doesn't have to be ugly. This is also fire-safe plantings. We've got low growth, non-combustible, plants are spaced apart. Doesn't have to look ugly. And here you've got a grass fire, much like what the fire you just saw, where the fire itself almost puts itself out because it's not so, the flames are not as intense. It's a flashy fuel, burns very fast, is over with quickly. We generally do not lose houses in a grass fire, unless, of course, the homeowners in this case had planted 4 rosemary bushes up next to the house, and that low intensity grass fire became a higher intensity fire up next to the structure, and we lost the structure. This is one of the problems. We've got vegetation next to the house. This was during the Woolsey fire. This is an LA City firefighter doing what he can at this condo when the embers land into the vegetation next to the structure. And again, we don't have enough firefighters to be able to address each one and each resident. And regardless of what he's doing, those embers can smolder for days. And we've seen where houses will burn down several days after the fire passes because the vegetation, the embers smolder, get a hold of a piece of vegetation next to the structure and set it on fire. So the Insurance Institute for Business, Homes, and Home Safety is a nonprofit organization that was funded by the insurance companies to find out how to reduce risk. And out of that program, they've come up with the 0 to 5 foot zone. Now, I'm sure you've all heard about this. It's something that is currently into the code. It's not enforceable yet because it's still going through the state, the gears of state bureaucracy, but it's coming into code this January for new construction. And then next year, it'll be retrofit, retroactive to existing residents to include that 0 to 5 foot zone. And we're going to talk about what that entails. Here's an example from the IBHS of an example of a current structure and what the new standard is going to be. Now, people look at that and say, well, wait a minute, I got to get rid of my azaleas, my Italian cypress, my roses that are up next to the house, the mulch, my beautiful house, and this is what my new reality is. And it is, it's a stark difference. As a fire professional, I look at this one and I think of how beautiful it is. And I relate back to the seatbelt laws in California back in the late 70s, early 80s, when it became the law that we had to wear seatbelts, and everyone was against that because, hey, it's my car, I'm driving, I can choose whether to wear a seatbelt or not. And then we started fining people for not wearing seatbelts. Well, fast forward 30 years, if you get into a car today and you forget to put your seatbelt on, if something's wrong, it feels different, and you automatically put it on. That's where fire prevention is headed or should be headed. Where you look at this and you think, I'm uncomfortable with this. And this is the new standard and where we need to be. Here's an example of a project we're working on. And this is what some of the 0 to 5 looks like. Eliminating any flames that are going to come up against that house. This is the owner of our company. This is actually the very first IBHS Wildfire Prepared Plus home. It's in Southern California here. That's the owner of our company. We cleared out the vegetation, created that 0 to 5. This is me at my house. I practice what I preach. So this is not something you need to hire a company to do. I did it myself. My dogs were there watching. This is a weekend project. Get your kids out there, rip out the vegetation, replace the gravel. Easy to do. Back to our little orange friend. We do everything we can, and yet we still lost it. Everything but the fence. So what happened? This is another thing we see as wildland firefighters. We're in our wildland gear. We're there to fight the vegetation. We're not suited up to go into a house. We don't have that 15 firefighters behind us, so we're watching structures burn. In this case, I can kind of explain to you that the fire came up this hillside and the flames attacked this home. But how do you explain the homes that are in this infield across the street? How are they burning? It's embers. This is a great video showing the flames aren't going to get this house. The radiant heat's not going to get this house. But see those little firebrands and the embers? They are really attacking that house. And those are individual fires, each one of them. It only takes one of them that can set that house on fire over the next couple of days, be it immediate or be it smoldering for a couple of days. Those homes are threatened by those embers. IBHS has shown that up to 90% of the structure lost from a wildfire is from embers, not direct flame contact or radiant heat. This home may look familiar to some of you. This is from the Emerald Bay fire in Laguna back in October 30 years ago. And this is referred to as the miracle house. All the houses were lost except for this one house. I look at it, not really a miracle. She's got non-combustible siding, non-combustible roof. She's got managed vegetation. Interesting fact on this house, she was self-insured. When I look at this picture, I'm curious about the miracle vegetation because the vegetation didn't burn. It was only the structures. And now we all know from Lahaina, and you're seeing this on the news, this miracle house of Lahaina. Now, it's a coincidence that it's a white house with a red roof. But again, in looking at this and knowing the history of this house, it really wasn't a miracle. The people that bought this house, they did vegetation management and cleared everything away from the side of the house, replaced it with gravel because of termites and bug infestation. And if you keep the ground dry around your house, that eliminates the termites. So that's what they did. And the result of that also made it fire safe. Again, wildland firefighters, we go in through the front door, do what we can, but we've got the second floor and the attic burning and none of the vegetation. They've even got palm trees next to the house, which are not a good idea, but in this case, they're not burning. It's the attic and the second floor. These are homes down in Laguna Niguel. This fire happened about 2 years ago. This is wildland brush, but it was also maintained and managed. They had their buffer zone that met code, and their vegetation on their property, for the most part, met code. Yet, during this fire, the vegetation on their property was untouched. In fact, the first floor of the structures didn't catch on fire. It was the attic, eventually burning down into the second floor, which eventually took out the entire house. And you can see from these photos, it wasn't fire coming into the first floor and going up. You had stucco houses with tile roofs with the attics fully involved. There were 21 homes, and that's how they all burned, from the attic down. And it's because of vents. And I'm sure you've all heard about this. It's the 1/4-inch mesh that's standard for vents that allows embers to get inside the house. Now, since 2007, state code requires any new structure has to meet what we call a 7A building standard, and you have to have ember-resistant vents. The good news is these vents are available, and you can retrofit your house with these vents. There's a new, newly approved, they just got their state fire marshal and ASTM approval for a wildland defense mesh that came out of Australia. It passed all of its certifications, and you can now retrofit your existing vents with this screen. So we're seeing more and more of this. We use this a lot with our clients. This is one in Pasadena just about a month ago. She was told by her handyman that the gable vent was fine, she was having a rodent problem, and he says, no, everything's good. Well, when we looked, it obviously wasn't. We're able to retrofit with 16th inch mesh, 16th inch stainless steel mesh, and it's ASTM and State Fire Marshal approved. This is a home in the Windy Fire in the Sequoias. That's actually my crew. We're creating that 5 foot of zone around the house before the fire came. Yet we still lost this house about an hour later. And it's because the crawl space under the house was wide open. They had a wood lattice, and we actually have it on video. There was another house with a Ring camera video that captured this house where the fire got underneath it, embers got underneath, and the house the underside of the house caught on fire first. Well, we can retrofit. This is actually at my house, retrofitting decking and any appendage, so embers don't get under there. First of all, the debris doesn't get under there, leaves, and then embers aren't going to get under there. And gutters. Gutters are a problem because we clean them out just before the rainy season because we want them to do their job. And then we don't think about it after the rain because, hey, I don't need to clean them up because I'm not expecting any rain. Problem is the debris remains in there. They'll catch an ember and set the edge of the roof on fire. IBHS, through their testing, has found that homes that have plastic gutters, the first thing that happens is the edge of the roof catches on fire. Then the gutter catches on fire, falls away, and sets the side of the house on fire. So it's important that gutters be non-combustible, metal gutters and downspouts, and that we put gutter guards to prevent the debris from catching, building up in there and catching debris, and then eventually catching embers when the fire season comes. So we've been talking about home hardening from wildfires, and we've been talking about vegetation management. These are the two things that you need to do together to protect your structure. If you're not going to do vegetation management, you're only going to harden your home, you're still threatened. If you're only going to do vegetation management and not harden your home, you're still threatened. Both of these need to happen simultaneously.
Hey, Rich, is there audio with this video?
Oh, it's not coming through, huh?
Oh, it might just be me.
Okay.
No, I can't hear it either.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
so
I
this
think
is
it's
an
all of us.
IBHS house that they built, and half of it has your typical 0 to 5 foot that has mulch and plants and combustible construction. And the other side was non-combustible, and the 0 to 5 non-combustible siding and gravel. They threw the same amount of embers to the test home, and the non-protected side caught on fire. So there's a lot of videos to the IBHS. If you go to their website, they talk about the specific science-based protection, and they have videos that show how they came up with that answer. So I highly recommend going to the IBHS or the wildfireprepared.org and see those videos. They're very educational. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the IBHS, and we'll go through this pretty quick, but this is a program that Farmers is using. They're the first insurance company to require that their homeowners meet this certification to renew in the WUI. For a short period of time, State Farm was using it, but it only lasted about a month. And right now it's Farmers, and it's meeting the IBHS base. So it's the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. The requirements are based on years of scientific research, and you can see those videos on their website. It's a two-tiered approach with a IBHS Wildfire Prepared Home and Wildfire Prepared Plus. It's a parcel level wildfire risk reduction. It's available to single family detached homes, 3 stories or less. It only applies in California at this point. Manufactured homes, townhomes, and apartment buildings as such, they're not eligible for the designation. However, we're working on that with IBHS on condos or townhomes with 2 homes that are connected together if they both do everything. So this is a program that we're continuing to improve upon. This is what it looks like. The orange is your wildfire prepared base, and the blue are the added sections for the plus. And that's where you get into dual glazed windows, boxing of eaves, covering of the gutters and such. But we're going to talk about the base requirements. So the documentation is unique to individual properties. So your inspector comes out, which could be from our company. It applies to just your property. Once it's achieved, the certification is good for 3 years, but it does require an annual landscape review. To achieve the wildfire prepared home, you need to meet the following requirements. The roof has to have a Class A covering, which would be asphalt, shingles, concrete, brick, masonry, or metal. The gutters would need to be non-combustible, same with the downspouts, and it must be clear of debris. Now in the wildfire plus, they require that there be gutter guards on. And then your vents, the vents need to be addressed, or anything for enclosed attics. That would be your gable, your ridge vents, open and enclosed eave vents and soffit spaces, under eave cornices, under floor, getting into your foundation and crawl space. All of those vents need to be protected. And the protection is a non-combustible metal and covered with non-combustible corrosion-resistant mesh that doesn't exceed 1/8 inch. Now, over the years, we know that 1/4 inch allows embers big enough to ignite the inside of the attic or foundation. We also know that 1/8 inch will also allow embers in. It's much better, but it will also allow embers in. It's just not, they're just smaller and hopefully not as many. The 16th inch mesh seems to do pretty much could block all of the embers from getting in. And the ones that do get in just don't have the energy to ignite. Dryer vents for the house need to have a louvered opening to prevent embers from getting in there. And then the plumbing and chimney vents are excluded from this requirement because they don't penetrate the house the same way as the ventilation vents. You need to have a 6-inch vertical non-combustible zone, and that's the exterior wall must be non-combustible within 6 inches of the ground. Now, if you've got a stucco house, that meets the requirement, or non-combustible siding. If you've got combustible siding, you need to have that 6 inches of non-combustible. We see retrofits with hardy board or some other metal. I've even seen metal. I think up north in the where you're subject to snow, a lot of people already have that metal protection from snow against the house. That also is your fire resistive 6-inch vertical non-combustible zone. And that's what that looks like. And this is from testing from IBHS, where they look where those embers fall. And there's a large amount of embers that gather at that corner of the house. If you want to know where your vulnerable spots are at your house, if you look where the leaves through the year gather at your house, that's where the embers are going to gather as well. You need to have this 5-foot ignition resistance zone, the HIZ. This is the new zone 0 that's going to be coming into the code. Existing starting in January and retroactive starting next year, which I don't know how they're going to enforce that, but it's going to be in the code. And that's going to be 5 foot of non-combustible area. It must be free of all vegetation. Overhanging trees, bushes must be trimmed back outside of this zone. The outside of this zone, picture as a wall to the sky. And again, this is what that looks like. Free of combustible items, no furniture, no firewood, no trash cans. Ground cover must be non-combustible, such as gravel, paving stones, or you can do mineral earth if you can keep it weed-free. Must be free of any parked or stored boats and RVs. So that becomes an issue if your driveway is right next to your house and you're parking your boat or RV there. If you're going to meet the IBHS standard, you can't have a boat or an RV within that 5 feet. Let's talk about decks and covered porches. The top surface must be clear of debris. You're allowed up to 10 movable potted plants. Non-combustible furniture, they can have cushions on them, as long as those cushions can be removed and pulled inside. Cushions in the doormats, pull them in wildfire or in a high wind or threatened fire conditions. The underside of the decks need to be clear of debris, vegetation, no storage. Wide open like you see here. Any deck that's over 4 feet off the ground needs to be protected, excuse me, by either enclosing it to the ground with non-combustible materials such as your James Hardy board or metal, or you can use that wildfire defense mesh that we talked about and screen it to the ground. Fully enclosed to the ground, anything under 4 feet off the ground. Covers, pergolas, gazebos need to be non-combustible materials. They need to be free of vegetation and curtains, no curtains or drapes or screens around them, and only 10% of the roof can be covered with non-combustible slats. Fences, any fence within 5 feet of the house needs to be non-combustible material, including where fences are attached to the house. This may involve your neighbor. You know, in the state of California, we brought the sprinkler code in about 3 code cycles. The trade-off on that is we're allowed to have homes within 3 feet of the property line as opposed to 5 feet. So there may be times where a wooden fence is within 5 feet of your home, and that may involve coordinating with your neighbor in replacing that with a non-combustible fence. Accessory structures, your outbuildings, garages, things like that. They need anything within 30 feet of the home with a footprint greater than 15 square feet. They need to meet the same wildfire resilience as required for the home. So all those things we just talked about, that outbuilding, that ADU, that garden shed, dog houses, they need to meet the same 5-foot clearance around it and same non-combustible features. People have been calling IBHS and thinking if I just pay my fee, I'll get certified, and they're finding out that they have to put the work in. And it's a little confusing going through the website to get this done. So a lot of people have been contacting us and we've been walking them through it. So you can contact Allied Disaster Defense and we do a phone consultation with you to walk you through it. And hopefully that's all you need to do. If it's a little more challenging or you want to have us come out, we can do a field inspection. We coordinate the modifications and treatments with you, and we help you submit for that certification with a guarantee that you're going to get certified. We're not going to let you submit if you're not going to get your certification. So that keeps us busy. At Allied, we have over 250 years of experience with our crews. We've got 14 firefighters. They're battalion chiefs, they're fire marshals, highly talented, all of them with at least 30 years of experience that are still wanting to do the firefight and do the fire prevention. So that's who we are. We do wildfire risk assessments. We're the only listed third-party company that does the wildfire prepared home certifications. And we do just general inspections for wildfire and then specifically for the IBHS. We install ember-resistant vents. We do the gutter guards. We can do non-combustible sidings. We're a licensed construction contractor as well. So anything you need to do this, we're available. If you need vegetation management, we meet with your gardener or your landscape and we give them the plan. We don't need to do that for you, or we will get you, the help you need if you do need that help, but oftentimes you already have those people in place. Vegetation management, we just talked about that. We make sure you got that 0 to 5, that 30, and the 100-foot clearance. It's based on our firefighters coming. We do what's called fire modeling or triaging your house. The firefighter stands there as if there's a wildfire coming. Is this house going to survive? And if the answer is no, what are the things we could do so this house will survive? So it's not a checkbox form. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's tailored for the house, and it's based on the construction of the house, the topography, the fuels, the age of the fuels, the wildfire behavior in the past, the fire history in that area. So it's a tailored inspection to the home so it will survive. We've been talking about home hardening and vegetation management, and it's a holistic approach. It must be both of those happening simultaneously to survive. Those are the cupcake. You ever had a really good vanilla cupcake that doesn't need frosting? It just tastes really good. That's your home hardening and your vegetation management. There are other things. It's the frosting on the cupcake. That's the long-term fire retardant. That's sprinklers, pool pumps, fire doors, fire gels. We'll talk about that. These are all the add-ons. This is the frosting to that cupcake that we're going to let you eat a good cupcake with frosting, but I'm not going to let you eat the frosting and call it dessert. That makes sense. We got to have the home hardening and vegetation management first. So let's talk about the frosting, the add-ons, the long-term fire retardant. So our company does long-term fire retardant. We use FosCheck, which is the gold standard for fire retardant. It's been used, FosCheck, the product we're using was developed in the 60s. It's environmentally friendly. They've been dropping it out of airplanes on the federal and state levels, on federal and state protected lands. We're all familiar with the red stuff coming out. The exact same thing we use, we just don't have the red oxide in it. Exterior foam and water sprinkler systems. Those are available if they're used appropriately. And we have access to that. And sometimes that is a solution that we can help solve this problem. Some insurance companies are requiring this as a discount, for a discount. Automatic fire doors, we've actually used this, where you've got a large exposure door or window that the only way to protect it is to put a fire door. And we have companies that we have vetted for fire doors. Portable fire pumps. So we provide portable pumps. These are legitimate pumps. They're professional grade. When we come out, we set the pump up and we lay out all the hose and we train the residents. We'll train the neighborhood. If you've got estate managers, whoever, we're going to train everyone how to use this pump. More importantly, not how to use it, but when not to use it. We don't train you as a firefighter. Part of our training is to explain what a wildfire is like, so you can get the pumps out to be used by the fire department. And then we have access. We're all familiar with the gels, Barricade and Thermogel. We have access to that. We can provide that for you and training in that as well. Part of our pump and Barricade or fire gel program, we provide a large sign that when you evacuate, once you set up your pump and you've got your gel set out there, there's a large sign that's placed in front of your property. And I can tell you from years of experience that if a fire engine's coming down the street and I've got to protect a half dozen homes and I've got a home that has a fire pump set up and gel, I can put one firefighter there to protect that home and not use my equipment. We're going to use your equipment. So it's an added level of protection to get those firefighters to defend your property without using their equipment. Evacuation plans. We provide a tailored evacuation plan for all of our clients. There's no secret to this. It's the CAL FIRE Ready, Set, Go program. We've just taken that program and we pre-fill it out We do your evacuation routes. We get everything set up so you have that plan. One things we've seen is, you go to a fire safe council meeting, you learn about the evacuation plan, you're going to do it, but then life gets busy. And we just kind of get that step, get it done for you so you have that plan. And we offer that free of charge to our clients. Wildfire monitoring and alert, we provide that to our clients. 24/7 alert. And these are ones that you can find online to get alerts for wildfires. We provide public education. We go to homeowners associations. We work a lot with brokers and insurance companies, educating homeowners on what they need to do, but also educating insurance companies as to what their real risk is. We've actually had an insurance company that was going to cancel someone. We went out, did some minor stuff. We showed through our report that there really wasn't a threat to this structure. And the insurance company bought off and said, okay, we're going to insure that. We have our All Things Wildfire. In fact, I'm in our studio today. We have our All Things Wildfire podcast. So you can tune into that. We've got some really great shows there that talking about wildfires and everything that's happening there. Part of our company, we do flow logic, the water shutoffs, electrical monitoring of a house, and earthquake valves. And these are things that are available to homeowners. If you need help with that, we recommend it, and we can help you get through that as well, because we're a allied disaster defense. So we do protect against earthquake and flood damage and gas leaks, things like that. We also provide a comprehensive documentation of your property. One thing I can tell you that we've seen is when you lose your house in a wildfire, your insurance company comes and hands you a form and says, list everything you lost so we can get you your money. Well, do you remember everything that you have? And they're coming to you probably in one of the most stressful times, and you're having to recreate your life. So we help you create that ahead of time. So when there's a loss, you just hand the insurance company your files, and it makes the process much easier on you. We provide emergency backup generation. This is our footprint right now. We're based out of Southern California. We are moving throughout the state. We're hoping, and then by second quarter, we're going to be up in Northern California in your area. Eventually, we are going to go all over the Western United States with our company. If you have any questions, I love this picture. These residents that are not properly dressed, they're wearing their shorts and flip-flops, wanting to take pictures of the fire dropping airplanes with the fire burning right behind them. There's our contact information. I'll put it up on the screen. That's the end of my presentations. Congratulations, you went through our first IBHS Farmers Insurance Program. And I've got people taking notes, and we provide any feedback you have, we'd appreciate. And I'll open up to any questions you have.
Well, Rich, it's a very thorough presentation, so I give it an A. I think it's great. Your graphics were great. Your explanation was great. Yeah, I think Farmers is probably very happy with what you're doing. I'm going to ask people who have questions, go ahead and either raise your hand or put it in the chat. And Casey can help me then call on people. I'll just start with a few of my questions. So you've connected with Farmers, and Farmers sees the value in the IBHS certification system, which I think is great. Is there any other insurance companies on the horizon that you know of that you think will say, okay, we will consider, keeping our California customers if they go through this process?
Absolutely. So the IBHS test was sponsored by insurance companies to do exactly what Farmers is doing. It's to identify what my risk is, because, insurance companies make insurance by selling insurance. And if you don't sell insurance, we're not going to make money. And in 2018, insurance companies were spending $1.70 for every dollar they were bringing in. Not a good business model. And so insurance companies are trying to come up with that solution. So they paid for IBHS to do this study. This has only been out maybe a little over a year has been the results of the study that was done, in hopes that insurance companies will use this to identify their risk so they can, offer insurance. The first one that jumped in on it was State Farm, and they were requiring the Wildfire Prepared Plus, which is a very difficult standard, and it wasn't working out. So it only lasted about a month. Farmers, about 5-6 weeks ago, started sending out notices wanting the base. So this is the first. We do anticipate that other insurance companies who made this investment for the study will be jumping on board with it.
Okay, all right, great. Now, NIST also just released their test results on their separation distances, structure to structure was really what they were trying to figure out. And, unfortunately, with our building code, it's not matching up. We're getting all this wonderful information that's backed up by actual fire loss and then replicated in the laboratory, and it's still being ignored in terms of what's happening with the building code and what's being built out there in the WUI. So your video of the juniper, I think they need to see that, because that could have been a small shed, and that was probably more than 30 feet away from the structure, but the intensity, that's how these structures are ignited. It becomes a structure to structure. And if anybody's seen a structure fire, you don't have to see a wildfire, but a structure fire, is a mass amount of heat, radiant heat, embers, and those embers are flying potentially miles away. So I think that structure to structure, anything you place next to your structure within 30 feet, is an issue. And I'm sure you could talk all day on that. So to get Allied to come out to Northern California, and maybe we can work with Zeth on this, the Santa Clara Fire Safe, to actually do some certification assessments, what exactly do you think that would take? I mean, do we, cost-wise per homeowner, time-wise for Allied?
So that's something we're working on. This is, again, we're only 5-6 weeks into the farmers program. That's something we're working on now. In fact, we're working with Seth on that. And I can see that if we had, it's not practical for us to come up there for a single home. But if there was a community or an HOA that was interested in the entire HOA becoming wildfire prepared, and then it makes more sense for us to come out. Eventually, hopefully, again, sometime this year, we are going to have a footprint up there. But we can definitely, try to make something happen that makes sense for both the HOA and the residents up there, and for our business model.
Yeah,
that's things we're definitely looking at.
Yeah, potentially there could be some sort of sign up, like if you need 100 homes or 50 homes or whatever, they could sign up through Fire Safe. We could give you their information, and once you've got enough houses. My message to property owners has always been, your house needs to be able to stand on its own during a wildfire, and your job needs to be able to get you, your family, your pets evacuated. And so if your house can't stand on its own, I mean, the flame front, it's game over, but the ember front, you have a chance, and your house has to stand on its own. Every tiny little hole, every bird nest, every little plant makes a difference. All it takes, ultimately, is one ember going in your attic, and these houses are burning from the inside out from a wildfire. The wildfire is penetrating the inside of the house, and then your house is burning from the inside out. Your picture of, the attic and things like that in your presentation, it really shows that. And I don't think people really understand that. And
your home, you protect your home, that's protecting your neighbors, and back and forth. If you protect your home and it's got it sealed up and nothing's going to happen, you're confident that your home is not going to be affected by embers. But your neighbor, and as you said, California building code, we can build within 12 feet of each other now. Actually, less than that. We can build within 6 feet, according to the building code. If your neighbor's home's not protected and it catches on fire, that's where that structure to structure exposure happens. And that's what we saw in Coffee Park. It was house to house. We know an exposure defined by NFPA is 30 feet. Studies have been shown, Jack Cohen did a great study years ago showing that 60 feet is enough from a wildfire. That video you saw earlier, that juniper was 40 feet from that house. So yeah, the problem is we've got existing structures and 99.99% of the California is built. And so the structures that are there, we can't just pick up and move them apart. So it's important that not only you get your structure so it won't ignite and set your neighbor's house on fire, it needs to be your neighbor's. It's a community's problem and a community's solution. Absolutely.
And, you know, I feel, as being in the fire service, I know how inundated the fire departments are, and they cannot go out into the community and start doing these really thorough inspections. There are very, very, very few agencies in the Bay Area who can do that. They, you know, their prevention bureaus have really been ratcheted down. Construction is, you know, at an all-time high, and they have to focus on all those things. They can't go out. They don't have a team of inspectors to go out and do these home inspections. And like you said, each house inspection is really very, very, very different. Every single house is different. And the items that you can find during one of these thorough inspections can be the smallest little. It could be a bird nest. It could be a small little opening that residents aren't going to see or to find. It really needs to be a very trained eye. And these inspections take a while. It's not like a 5-minute look. It really is. You have to walk around the house and you have to be everywhere on the property. It takes a good 45 minutes at least.
Oh,
to do
easily.
something like that.
And it's a good point about the fire service. You know, they're regulatory. They enforce fire code, and the fire code is a minimum standard. And as fire officials, we know all of these things, but we can't enforce or regulate retrofit events. All the things that you need, the fire department can't enforce or regulate that. We can educate to it, but the tax dollars can't be spent for a firefighter, a fire inspector to do things to your home so you can save on your insurance. So that's where firefighters or the fire department's working with the FireWise communities, Fire Safe Councils, CERT teams to get that education out there because it's not something that's enforceable by code.
Right. I'm really hoping that the state of California will start issuing potentially grant funding so we could get teams of really, you know, thorough inspections of properties from probably third parties. And then actually go out into some of our WUI and offer these somehow for free through the grant, because homeowners really need it. I look around my neighborhood and I'm like, this is not going to work. You know, our whole neighborhood is vulnerable because of maybe, you know, 10 houses in a 300 house subdivision. And that will be our demise because those 10 houses are so vulnerable. Okay, let's, I think hopefully people have had time to formulate their questions. Casey, I see you have your hand up, so let's have you start.
Hey, cool. Rich, I had 2 questions, really. First off, during your presentation, you were referring to a mess of requirements coming into play, and I wasn't sure if those were requirements of your program or of legal requirements in the state code. That is to say, to be vetted by you find folks, do your requirements go beyond the existing code, or are they in code that just hasn't essentially turned on yet? That's my first question.
Yeah, that's great. A great point. So it is in the code in the 7A standard, the building code, but that's for new construction. So any home that's built after 2007 are meeting these, the ember resistant vents, the non-combustible siding, new homes. We know it works, but the state doesn't have a retrofit program. And I would imagine I don't know if I want the state to have that, because now we're forcing legislation. That's a whole nother subject. But we're taking those 7A standards and retrofitting on a volunteer basis on your structure to protect your structure. Now, the insurance companies, they're using that to lower their risk. So they're saying, hey, if you want to continue with your insurance, meet this standard. And if you don't, that's okay. Go somewhere else for insurance. I've got to tell you, if you've got an admitted carrier, State Farm, any of the carriers, do not lose your coverage. Do everything you can to keep your coverage, because trying to get coverage of an insurance company that's not a non-admitted, very difficult. They're not taking new customers. So keep your insurance and do whatever you can to not lose that coverage. And what they're requiring are the things that we talked about. So on the insurance coverage, they're requiring it. Legally, not required. Coming in the code a year from January, that 0 to 5 clearance, that is going to be required. How it's going to be enforced, that's a whole other subject. I'm glad I'm not a fire marshal anymore.
Great. And my second question was about the I'm going to try and get this so it's like intelligible to me, even the interoperability, if you will, between the analysis that you do on site. I mean, is there a formalized record keeping structure that can be shared between other organizations like yours and their local insurance agents and stuff? I mean, sort of like at the simplest level, a list of commonly recognized checkpoints that someone can then share with a distant organization or can carry on their own and say, well, your insurance company looks like you adhere to these rules. Here's the analysis by, Allied Disaster Defense. Will you accept their analysis?
Yes. So all of our inspections, comes with a very detailed inspection report about the individual things or why it's a threat, what can be done about it, and the science behind and the experience behind it. It's a wildland firefighter who's telling you, I couldn't protect this home. This is where the threat is. So that's one of our inspections. It's very detailed. Then there's the IBHS, which may or may not have a couple of other things in there. So both of those, you come away with a report that is science-based, experience-based. This is what needs to be done. Like it or not, we've written reports and people have said, there's no way I'm going to do that. And it's like, okay, we're not an enforcing agency. We're just giving you the tools and the information to protect yourself. And what you do with that information is up to you.
Okay, let's go through the chat. Casey, I'm gonna let you help me. Nikki, I see a question from you about tree limbs, which are well over 10 to 15 feet above the roof. Did you want to go ahead and ask the question?
Hi, sure. Yeah, I can just ask that question. Just a second. I'm trying to. Can you hear me? For some reason, the
Yes.
video.
Sure can.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering when you said to create kind of a picture of vertical wall to the sky of clearance that would meet that 0 to 5 foot structure. I was just picturing a lot of houses that are under, say, towering redwood trees or super large oak trees. And are you saying that all limbs that are above the structure would have to be removed, or would you just create vertical clearance above the structure?
Great
in addition?
point.
Okay.
So you've got competing things happening here. So the fire code requires you to have that 5 foot of vertical clearance to prevent that radiant heat from going down. That meets your fire department fire code. Again, a minimum standard. The IBHS is not based on looking at a code book. It's looking at fire science. And right now they're saying clear to the sky. Now, you also have state of California where the oaks are protected, the sycamores are protected. You may have other protected trees in your community that's within 5 feet that legally you can't get rid of.
Yeah.
There's the competing parts.
Okay.
So we've had this where, hey, IBHS has identified this as a problem. Let's say it's a neighbor's tree. Hey, this tree is a fire hazard. Okay, that's not my tree. Okay, but it's a fire hazard. It's on the report. Well, that's my neighbor's. Well, the fire doesn't know where the property line is and doesn't know what's yours and what's not. Code is going to be to your property line. Science
Mhm.
is the threat, identifying the threat, and what are we going to do about it? Does that help answer your question? There may in some cases we haven't found answers, and this is an evolving. The other thing, this is an evolving process with the IBHS. Additional testing is happening. It's being refined. It's a fairly new program, and we're refining it. Some areas it may get stricter. Some areas we may eventually lessen the restrictions. But it's definitely just science-based.
Okay. I was thinking about just the feasibility of that one on the trees.
Mhm.
Because if you're picturing a really massive tree, you might not, maybe there would be a compromise where you could have it super tidy and really well limbed up and commit to maintenance, something like that, or it's species specific. So like an oak is vastly different than say an enormous juniper.
Totally agree.
That kind of thing.
Totally agree.
So
And right now,
be.
yep. No, I agree, and I hope that's what happens.
Okay.
And I think it will. But
Just
right
over
now,
time.
right now it's a new program that's evolving, and we may see those changes. We've actually
Okay.
had some changes in the IBHS from white papers that we've written going, we know it shows this, but in reality this, and we've had some, we're able to refine it. That's all happening. We'll get there.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And Nikki, I just want to add, I believe it's still in the fire code that so this is state mandated code, 0 to 10 feet from your fireplace, you cannot have branches or tree limbs. So
Right.
you up there in the WUI, a lot of people have fireplaces. Trees hanging over your roof aren't just a fall hazard, a radiant heat, flame impingement hazard. They also fill your gutters and your roof with debris. And so there's been I love trees. Okay. I absolutely love trees. But there's been many times that I've been on a homeowner's property and they have a beautiful pine tree or redwood tree and it's very close to the house. And I say, that's a lovely tree. This is the issue. You have to do pros and cons. It is filling up on a daily basis your roof line, your gutters, and it is causing literally kindling to be, placed on your roof that you can't get up there every day and clean off. You have flame impingement, you have radiant heat issues. So you have 3 significant issues that your house cannot withstand during a wildfire. So you have to make that decision. Yes, that tree is healthy and beautiful, but it's going to be the demise of my house if there's a wildfire that goes through. That is the process that people need to be really thinking of when they walk around their property. It's not that, oh, my son planted that tree 10 years ago and I'm keeping it no matter what. It needs to be a much more open-minded, I think, thought process. And sometimes bringing somebody in, and walking around and explaining that to people, is important. But, and ultimately the homeowner has to make that decision. So,
yeah,
it's expensive too,
That was the other thing is it might just be a triage where you have to say, okay, what can I afford? What's most important?
Well, and it's a
Maybe
multi-year plan. It's a multi-year plan. It took me, I was a fire marshal for many years. I wanted to practice what I preached. It literally took me, I want to say 8 to 10 years to do everything I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Change my windows, change my deck, change my roof,
Huge
hardy board, site. It was literally a 10-year process. And by the time I retired, I was like, oh my God, I'm finished. I actually hardened my home.
Now I need to have another career to pay for it.
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was a good question though. Okay, so let's keep going with the question.
MJ has her hands up and some
Yes,
questions.
okay. MJ, I'm looking at your question about the door. I did reply to you on what my opinion is on the door, but go ahead and ask your question, please.
Yeah, Rich, I just wanted to know, you mentioned fire doors, and is there a place I could go where I could learn more about that?
Yeah, if you reach out to us, we've vetted, a couple of companies, on these fire doors, and they're remotely activated. They're actually used quite a bit in Europe.
Oh,
Just,
you're talking about some electronic thing.
well, the electronic, there's also manual ones, I'm sure. It's just a non-combustible roll-down door that for
Yeah.
your house.
Oh, no, I was
Or an
talking about
exterior.
an exterior door, just a regular door, not a garage door.
Oh, just a regular fire-rated door?
Yeah. We're,
So on your doors, the important thing is to make sure there's no gaps underneath, that they seal properly. And if you've got nothing against it, if all it's is getting hit is embers and falling away, that, typically, your typical door, you can make it fire resistant, without having to replace it with a fire type door. If that's what your question was.
well, I'm going to replace my door anyways. I'm going from a 32-inch to a 36-inch door, and the retailer was offering me a fiberglass clad door, and he was saying it says fire resistant as steel, but I actually couldn't find any information about that.
So MJ, what you're really looking for if you want the ultimate, you can buy a 1 or 2 hour door for a resident. I think buying a 1 hour door is what you want. When you go door shopping, you just say, hey, show me the 1 hour door, that 1 hour rated doors. Without seeing the door, and the manufacturers will put on there what they actually are. But you want a door that can withstand that temperature, like from your garage to your house, if it's connected, those are always 1 hour doors. So if you're putting a front door on or a side door on, and if fire rating is important to you, look for the 1 hour door, 1 hour or more.
And typically your exterior doors are going to be a solid door anyway for security reasons and for weathering. So generally the exterior doors are going to have some kind of a fire rating, and they're going to be a more dense product. You can also go to the State Fire Marshal's website. They've got a material listing for different items that maybe you'll find some help there as well.
And no
Okay.
windows in the door if you're worried about the fire rating.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, so Casey, do you see, I think that's the end of the questions. I'm not seeing.
Yeah, I agree. I see a very handy discussion here. Seth
Yeah.
had a couple points about a CAL FIRE program for low-income people that they're testing in different parts of the state.
Yeah, we've heard, I want to say starting maybe 2 years ago, about grant money coming in from the state of California and trickling down to fire safe councils and other entities to help residents with home hardening. And I have been waiting and waiting and waiting, and I have not seen these. CAL FIRE did a pilot program, or they're doing a pilot program when they picked a few different areas, and I guess they're handing these grants out, and I think they're waiting for the results. I think it's a low income community that they're doing some of the pilot programs for. A lot of times in Northern California, in the San Mateo County area, there is only right now one or two small communities that are in the WUI that are considered low income. So none of our WUI residents would qualify if the state decides to only allow low income residents to participate in that program. And so for us to write a grant, if we're writing a grant and they're really looking for low income properties, we're not going to comply. But I'm sure Zeth and I are both have our ears to the ground, waiting for more information on the home hardening grant funds, because it is expensive. I mean, you get some of these quotes and people have all the right intentions, and then they get the quote to reside their house or their windows, and it's over the top. And that's why you kind of need a master plan. So getting a company like Allied, or an entity, a third-party entity, if your fire department can't do the inspection and give you at least a helpful plan of what you need to do, then you can create a priority list, and it's going to be multi-year unless you're building a new house. I think Casey was a really good example. He recently did a remodel, and I think, you know, he can tell you, you know, and I told him, I said, do everything you can, just research it before you actually start the remodel, and just do everything ignition resistant construction. And I think he's gonna be, you know, happy for years and years to come that he did that. So it's multi-plan, multi-year
With the
plan.
redwood limbs going through the deck, that took care of that problem.
Yeah. Well, and that's the issue, is that anything attached to your house it creates a vulnerability for your house. Anything. It could be a 1-by-1 deck. It could be an arbor. It could be a tree. It's anything. So you have to think, if it's attached to the house, you know, it's like a wick. You know, and the fence, a lot of people never think about the wood fences. And I know a lot of firefighters have seen that. Oh yeah, witness the fence igniting a house, igniting the eave to the house. So well, I'm really hopeful that Allied is able to quickly kind of get into Northern California, San Mateo County area. I think there's a huge market here. There's a huge market for contractors to do this sort of work. I have to say, and I've dealt with a lot of contractors because I'm not handy like that. And I try to explain to them what I want, and they do not know what I'm talking about. You mention to them, oh, a Vulcan vent or a Brand Guard vent. They're like, what? You know, and I'm like, okay, I get it. You guys, they're not savvy on it. So getting a company who already understands, knows how to do the inspections, knows the materials and the purpose, the theory behind it, it's a huge benefit. So it is a specialty, I have to say. The lack of inspectors who are really knowledgeable on how to do a true inspection on a property, it's an art, and there's very, very, very few people, I think, in San Mateo County who know how to really do that. It's almost like a triage inspection, you know, when you're at a wildfire incident. You have to figure,
You don't use a code book.
you don't use the code book.
And in the fire service, the fire prevention people usually are fire prevention engineers and wonderful fire prevention people. I was one of them. But the suppression, wildland suppression, the boots on the ground, they're the ones that really know, because they've lived it.
Yeah.
And so that's who you want, is someone with that kind of experience to do your inspection. It's not check boxes.
Yeah, and I think I do know that there are residents, quite a few residents who, you know, had AIG insurance and were having the FOS check pre-treatment on their properties. Some properties in San Mateo County are fairly large, hillsides, and they were actually having the FOS check treatment. And AIG was great about that. Now with AIG being gone, I don't think there's any insurance companies that are really offering that. And so you would need a third party entity. And I think right now Allied is probably the only one that potentially somebody could contract with if you were in, you know, San Mateo County, to have properties treated. And I think, you know, I think that's important. If you have a steep hillside of vegetation that you just can't, you know, you just can't manage. Okay, well, this has been really great, and we want Allied to stay in touch with us, and we'll stay in touch with Seth.
Denise, Dudley just popped up. Sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, go ahead, Dudley. You could be our last question.
Thanks. I'm just wondering if a recording of this session will be available to people who are not members of the fire safe group, because that question about other things that contractors don't know, I would love for my painter, who also does a lot of carpentry, to be able to watch this. It's a tremendously informative session. And it would be great if we could say, you know, go to this and look at this video and see what you think.
Yeah, you know, I think we always record our videos and put them on the Fire Safe San Mateo County website.
Right.
But, you know, what I think has always been very helpful, and I know you participated, Dudley, about doing actually in-person training sessions.
Yes.
And maybe we need to do more of a contractor-based one. you
I
know?
think that's a great idea.
Yeah,
So that is
so,
something that Allied is currently working on.
Mm.
We're gonna be building props and actually putting together a subcontractor training program to address everything you're talking about, when you hear this term and how to, meet the standards and we're also doing the same thing for landscape architects.
yeah, I think it's
Great.
really
Same
important,
thing, and landscapers, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important because, I've dealt with a lot of landscape architects and a lot of architects, and you'd get these plans and you're like, what are these people thinking? I'd pick up the phone and I'd call them. And I said, and they said, when we go to architect school or landscape school, like there is no fire behavior discussion whatsoever. They don't
Nope.
even discuss it. They don't talk about it. It's not in their minds. Same thing with planners. So somebody has to instill this information, and unfortunately, all these devastating fires, gets the attention of people say, well, maybe there's something we're missing here. But yeah, I think it would be really neat maybe to coordinate with Allied and Fire Safe Santa Clara and maybe have, and we've done the trainings before in just one day, a little bit of classroom explanation, and then go out to some actual houses or structures and say, okay, let's walk around the structure and teach them how to do these inspections. And then they know, once you do the inspections and you highlight, what needs to be done, they know how to put in a vent. It's just buying the right vent,
Mhm.
So, okay, well, thank you so much, Allied. We really appreciate your time, and we look forward to working with you. We can't wait for more information for you to come up into our neck of the woods. It's greatly needed, and we appreciate your expertise.
Well, thank you for having us this morning.
Okay.
Give us a call if you have any questions.
Oh, we shall. We shall. Thank you.